deep breath. And then go ahead and create a grounding cord that goes straight down to the center of the planet. From your tailbone right down to the center of the planet. Then reach back there and give it a little tug. Make sure it's attached. And then go ahead and explode it into 1,000 pieces. And then create another grounding cord, one that makes you smile. A funny one made out of monkey tails or pineapples or bananas, whatever you want. And drop it down from your tailbone right down to the center of the planet. Reach back there, give it a little tug. And then I want you to call all the energy from the past, all that energy from the past, yesterday, the day before, 5 minutes ago, call it all into the here and now. Bring that energy into your body, into your energy body. Good. And then let's go on out into the future. 5 minutes from now, later today, tomorrow, next week, and bring all of that energy back into the here and now. Very good. And any energy you don't need in your body, let go down that grounding cord, such as static energy. Just let it go down the grounding cord to the center of the planet. Mother Earth will take it. And then above your head, create a big ball about the size of a beach ball and color it gold. And put your higher self in that ball, and some of those qualities are love, openness, creativity, spirituality, compassion, and many others. Whatever else you want to put in there, go ahead. And make that ball shine twice as bright. And then reach above your head with your index finger and poke a little hole in the bottom of that ball so that beautiful golden energy can come out like somebody turned on a water faucet. And have that energy come down and fill your head up with this golden energy. And have it come down into your neck, relaxing your neck and shoulders, down into your arms, your forearms, your wrist, and your hands. And have this beautiful energy come down even farther, down into your chest, that big beautiful heart, into your upper back, and especially if there's any void in your heart, maybe after the meditation this morning, you let go of some energy. Fill it with this golden energy. Then have that beautiful energy come down farther into your stomach and low back. Relaxing your stomach and low back. And have it come down even farther into your genitals, down into your hips, down into your butt, relaxing your genitals, hips, and butt. And have this beautiful energy come down even farther, down into your thighs, down into your knees, down into your calves and ankles, relaxing your legs. And all the way down into your ankles and feet, bring this beautiful energy. And when your body is completely full of this golden energy, your higher self, when every cell is vibrating at gold, reach your hands up above your head, open up that ball, and allow this golden energy to come down like a waterfall and cleanse your aura. And bring your hands to your heart and check out how's your heart doing? Is your heart closed or is it open or someplace in between? Just notice. There's nothing to do. Take a good breath into your heart and feel where you're at right now. And also feel how it feels to be completely in your body, to occupy all of your body with your higher self. And when you're ready, I would like you to open your eyes and look around the group and give love to every individual that's in this circle. And even if they're not looking at you, go ahead and give love. And really maybe even adjust your posture a little bit so your heart is coming forward just a bit more. Give love through your eyes. For me, it always feels like here I am just looking around, giving love. You can't see anything, but I notice in my heart always feels more expansive. And I have a kind of a little warm kind of vibration in my heart that feels really good. And, it's like, hey, I can do this all the time. I can give love. It just doesn't have to be in this circle, and all of us can do that.
Could I make a request before we begin to close the door there, please? Could somebody close the door, please? Thank you. So listening to the meditation, it's just like Steve's still here, isn't it? Isn't that amazing? So, good evening, everyone. I would like to thank you for coming tonight. I would also like to welcome Steve's son and his wife, Nicole, Robin and Nicole, who couldn't be here tonight, and Steve's brothers. And I would like to welcome all the people who are watching this online right now or who will be watching a recording later. So, welcome everyone. And first of all, I'd like to thank you all for all your support and love in the last 15 months. It's been a pretty intense time, as you all know. So I'd like to say that at the beginning. Thank you. It's been very much appreciated on many, many levels. And organizing this, oh, I forgot to mention, see this here? This is the Wonder Dog. This is Coco the Wonder Dog. This is your moment. This is your, see, she's so sweet. Yesterday I was receiving a massage from a friend, and I told my friend I didn't want to bring the dog because I didn't want it to be all unsettling. But in the end, Coco spoke to me and she said, I belong here too. So here she is. So, yeah. So, no dog sounds, please, because if you make any sounds, she'll come over to you. So, you know, organizing this event was pretty intense. It was like organizing a workshop. And to be quite honest, this is probably the largest workshop I've organized, and it makes me very sad that it's actually not a workshop, but it's the tribute for Steve. And, you know, I stand here and I can smile and I can laugh, and I am devastated at the same time. And I don't know that time will ever change that. So just needed to mention that. And I have some notes here just in case. I usually don't like to work with notes, but I had to take some. So the subject I want to talk about tonight is I want to talk about that part of us that does not die. Because, you know, the fact is, some people have said to me, oh, Steve's soul is still around. I have seen him. I have heard him speak to me. He is not really dead. He is still alive. People have said, oh, he has been reincarnated. People have said, oh, I know the real reason why he died is because we needed to know all this and learn all that. Well, I don't know any of that. I don't know any of that at all. I don't know, period. Do any of us know? Really, we don't know what happens when our body dies. But what I do know is that there's certain parts of Steve that have not died, that are still there, that are still with me in my heart, that are still resonating out into the world, just like a song does. You know, there's this beautiful quote from Juru Kabal in his Quantum Light Breath meditation where he speaks about the melody is composed of 1,000 different notes. And the notes, they all disappear, but the melody is still there. And just in that way, the melody is still there. The melody of Steve is still there for me. And how much of the time do we cultivate those parts of us that don't die? You know, do we really spend time thinking about what of us isn't going to die? And how can we do that? How can we cultivate that? But, you know, that's up to all of us to bring awareness to these different kinds of things in our lives. But I want to talk about the things in Steve that haven't died for me. So the first thing I want to talk about actually is a more tangible thing. It's the gardens. Steve had an incredible green thumb. I don't know if any of you know that, but he could put anything into the ground, any plant, anywhere, and it would grow into an amazing forest. When you were looking for Steve, you could be pretty sure he's somewhere in the garden tending to plants. His harvests of fruit and vegetables were just amazing, and he did that in all the places I've been with him. You know, the first house I came to when I met him in '98, he had this small little garden, but he made it into a complete oasis. It was so beautiful. It was unbelievable. Then we bought this 40-acre property. Well, you can imagine, 40 acres. We had orchards, we had ponds, we had many, many different things. And so that part of Steve has even come to Costa Rica, because there he did the same thing. So when I go back there, he will live in all the papaya trees and the pineapple plants and all the palm trees and everything. And so that is a part of him that hasn't died, that will always live on. And then, of course, there's, other things. There's, let me see, I have to look at my notes, because otherwise I couldn't possibly remember. No, just joking. You know, the other things that are less tangible. For example, the love that he had, the love that he carried in his heart, the love that he shared so freely and so beautifully with the world, through his life, through his fun, through his laughter, through his tears, through everything that he did. You know, I didn't know that the word heartfulness existed before I met Steve, but if I had to define what the word heartfulness is, it's basically him. And that love, I can see in the faces of all of you here, is still resonant. It's still resonant because he put it out there so much. He put it out there in all his workshops, in everything he did. And that doesn't die. And I shall hope that one day, when it's my turn, that part continues on for me too. And then, of course, you know, his commitment to transformation. His commitment to transformation was huge. And, you know, with the work we did, with the workshop we did, one of the things that was always on his mind is how can he accept a situation and transform it? You know, the word Tantra is tools for expansion, tools for transformation. And so, you know, that is something that also continues. As I look here, I know many of you, when we first met, you were quite different people than you are now. You know, you've gone through a huge variety of transformations, and that lives on. That lives on also, very, very much so. And the other thing is that his authenticity. You know, he was so consistently Steve. You know, it's like I was looking at all these old photographs of him, even before him and I met, you know, when he had a young family, when he was with his first wife, or even when he was younger than that. And he was always the same. He was always this fun-loving, authentic, yummy person who likes to go to the beach and who played and who surfed and who went fishing. And it's just amazed me, the level of authenticity this human being had. You know, you always knew where you were at with Steve, you know, and that lives on for me as well. And then his sense of flow. For those of you who know me, which pretty much everybody, you know, I'm a more structured person, right? just a little bit structured. Whereas Steve, you know, he was a much more of a flow kind of a guy. You know, oh, look, Keita, come on, let's give him another 15 minutes. You know, we don't need to eat right now. It doesn't, you know, whatever. So I want to tell two stories that illustrate this concept in particular. And those were two learning stories for me as well. The first one is when we got a car in Costa Rica. Margot, please, can you put that? Sorry. No filming in here, please, while I speak. I'm sorry. So the first is about the car in Costa Rica. We got this new car. And it had to be taken care of. We had to get registration, and we had to get stickers, and we had to get all kinds of things for this new car. I didn't know what to get, he didn't know what to get, but we had to get it. So the day came, Steve said, okay, I'm gonna go and deal with the car. And I said, you're gonna deal with the car? He said, yeah. I said, did you make any appointments? No. I said, okay, well, good luck, you know. I was like, you know, going, okay, let's see what he does. You know, so off he went. It was a hot day, and 3 hours later he comes back. Hi, honey, you know, how's it? And I'm like, oh, you're back already? What about the car? And he was like, oh, got everything sorted out. And I was like, really? How did you do that? So he said, well, you know, I was driving to this town and the road was all dusty and, you know, I got thirsty. And so I went to the supermarket and got myself a bottle of water, you know, and the girl at the checkout, you know, she was, you know, real cute and, you know, really just lovely. And, you know, so I talked to her and she was really, you know, my Spanish and stuff. And then I told her, you know, actually I have to get this insurance for the car. And she says, oh, insurance for the car. Well, actually my Uncle Marvin, he lives just down the road. Why don't you go over there? So he went to see Marvin. Marvin told him, no, before you get insurance, you have to get the sticker. And you can get that. Well, actually the cousin of my wife, he's 3 down the... And so it went through all these different steps. And he got everything. And he came home and he was jubilant. And that was for me the ultimate illustration of what it means to be in the flow and to surrender, right? I had to eat some humble pie, I have to admit. So it was very, very beautiful, and I realized that that's definitely something for me to learn. Now, the other story I want to tell, and that reminds me, before I tell the story, I also would like to welcome my sister, who's watching this live in Denmark right now. So, hi. Because I'm going to tell a story about Denmark. So here we were in Denmark a few years ago, and we decided to go to the park of a nearby castle. You know, Denmark is a monarchy, so they have a queen, and they have a crown prince, and so forth, and they have castles. And so we went to go for a stroll in this park near the castle, and there was a moat and a pond, and like the whole thing, like a castle, right? An old castle. And the prince actually lives there with his wife. They do live there. And so, you know, we went there with my little niece and, you know, and played around. And before you knew it, Steve slipped into the pond. So here he was, he slipped into the pond. He got wet, probably up to the hip. But not only that, but he was green with algae. He was covered in algae. He smelled bad. He smelled real bad. So he said, we were like, oh God, you know, and Steve was like, not to worry, we'll just go up to the castle and see. So, you know, who goes up to a castle? He says, oh, look, there's a bell there. Maybe we should just ring the bell. Who goes up to the castle and rings a bell, right? Only Steve would. So anyway, he rings the bell. We were standing back, my sister and I, going, oh my God, what's he doing? What's he doing? So anyway, this woman shows up. I don't know if she was the prince's wife or the princess or whoever she was. And Steve said, and you know, in his American, you know, we're in Denmark, they speak Danish, you know, he kept saying, you know, I fell into the pond and, you know, I need to. So she opened the door, she said, no problem, and she took him over to the castle, and there by the side was like a sink, and he got washed off with this spray hose and all the rest of it, and they shook hands and waving, and my sister and I just stood there like, this is just not possible. And so that was really Steve. You know, that nothing is impossible. Everything is possible. Anything is possible. And so those two stories of him being in the flow, they're just so powerful for me, just to learn from and to really feel what life is all about. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that my journey's been really very intense. As you know, I've gone through cancer treatment. Then he got killed. Then I had knee replacement surgery. Now I'm here tonight. But the amazing thing is, as I mature in this process, and it feels like it's a maturing, accelerated maturing, I feel I get to know Steve even more. It's like I listen to this audio material he recorded, and I'm thinking, gee, he is so amazing. You know, and I might hear things that I haven't heard before. What he said, and I'm thinking, what a great, beautiful gift that is, that he lives on like that. You know, as I grow more, I understand him better and better and better. And although he doesn't have a body anymore, as we all know, he is still there. Now, once upon a time when we first got together, Steve told me the story that there was one person who told him that, oh, Steve, you're not spiritual enough. And you know, he really took that to heart. He really took that to heart. And so we spent some time discussing it, and we said, well, what does it really take to be spiritual? You know, does it mean you have to wear certain clothes? Does it mean you speak a certain language? Does it mean that, you know, you sit in Zazen 10 hours a day or go on retreat in a cave? All these things are relevant and important. But the conclusion that we came to is that spirituality is every moment. It's everything that we do. You know, it's everything that happens. And when we do it with awareness, that's what spirituality really is. And we had this saying that was, can you meditate 1,000 times a day? Can we meditate 1,000 times a day? And that means, can we be aware and awake and watchful 1,000 times a day? And so I believe Steve was really an incredibly spiritual being, because everything he did with such awareness and love and all that. And so to come back, to draw back the arch about that which doesn't die, I think you got the idea, what I was trying to say here. So really it is my wish for all of you and for myself that we cultivate that as much as we possibly can, because we really don't know how long our life is going to continue. As we see with Steve, he didn't think he was going to lose his life when he said goodbye to go to the hardware store, did he? And so, as a final statement, I would just like to say that I wish that the resonance of Steve's melody will stay with all of you forever. So, thank you.
Okay, Steve Carter, throat chakra. I didn't know I was going to have to follow that. That was amazing, Dennis. Thank you for that. I could sit here and talk about Steve Carter probably the rest of the night. I won't, but I probably could. Margot Anand is my teacher, Steve's teacher. One of her teachings is a question, really. Can you be as ecstatic in the lows as the highs? Thanks. That helped a lot this year. He was like a brother to me. But man, we laughed. We laughed a whole lot. And we cried. We bled. We did workshops. We grew things. He grew things on this 40-acre piece of property that I nicknamed El Rancho Carter on Oat Hill Road in Middletown. He loved to build things. Excuse me. And for those of you who don't know, my name's Steve Wismer, by the way. My throat chakra is really tight. He loved to build things, and I spent, I don't even know how many years, Lakita, living on property. And when I sit here and talk about Steve, I'm also talking about Lakita because we shared pretty much the same amount of time. One of the projects that we did, after a lot of discussion with Steve and Lakita, was this beautiful gate that maybe some of you have seen. This beautiful metal gate that Mark Nichols, who did all the incredible work at Harbin, did with Steve and I in his shop. Dan Argraves, who was here, built these beautiful tops for this thing with lights. And the gate was to mimic Kundalini energy. And it was this beautiful thing, but he loved to get up and go to Mark's shop and grind and sand and paint, try to satisfy his beloved Lakita. And of course, next to this gate, we needed to build these two huge square vajras with a big point on each side. And we'd get up in the morning, and Steve Carter would get out of bed around 9? 9:30, maybe 10. And he'd get up with a big smile on his face because he was just happy to be alive. We all know that, don't we? And by then, I'd be working on these vajras. And he'd come out after making a bowl of oatmeal, and occasionally he would invite me in for a bowl of oatmeal. And this guy taught me a lot of things, man, about teaching and life and things I could have said what Lakita said before I came up here. And he tried to teach me how to eat oatmeal with grapefruit on top. And I think that might be like scotch, where it's an acquired taste. I ate it. And I don't know if I liked it, buddy, but I ate it anyway. So anyway, he'd come out around 10 or 11, and we would spend the day going up into the woods with this little white truck, and we'd gather rocks, and we'd come back. Of course, if there was a really big rock, I seemed to get that job because he was like, come on, Wiz. He always called me Wiz. Come on, let's go get these rocks. So we'd gather rocks all day, and we'd come back, and we'd work on these pillars in 100-degree heat, huh, Lakita? And we spent weeks creating these two big, beautiful vajras in this thing. And he primarily did the left side. I primarily did the right side until there was a heavy rock, and then I got that one on the left side. And when we were done and Dan's tops were on and Mark's gate was in place, he stepped back. He says, you know what, Wiz? I think mine's a little nicer. And because we were like brothers, and I wonder sometimes if it was like having two sons, Lakita. I kind of looked at him and said, mine's bigger. And we laughed and we carried on. And we laughed a lot. I could tell Steve Carter a joke today. I could tell him the same joke tomorrow. And he'd laugh like he never heard it before. I mean, the guy taught me so much. Mostly just to how to love life. You know, it was just, it's in there. I don't think he's gone. I have to agree with Lakita. He's with me always. All the time. But my favorite Steve Carter story goes back to workshop. And in Margot's work, and Lakita's work, and Steve's work, and all of our works, there's a ritual about calling in the directions. And you may call on the energies of the north and the east and the west and the south. And you may use totems. You could use the hawk or the snake or this or that. And Margot has an incredible quality information chapter on this stuff. And I don't know that Steve read it completely because he was such a free-spirited dude. You know, he just like, let's have an orgasm. You know, it's like, well, just kind of, I don't need to pay attention. I'll do it my way. So it could be that the dolphin swam in the north this week. It could be that the dolphin swam in the south, maybe next week. And the dolphin seemed to swim everywhere with Steve Carter. But he would do this with such passion and such gusto, and he would just call in all these energies from the above and below, and the dolphin who swims everywhere. And we were in a workshop one time with his rattle, and he was toward the end of it, and he said, and let's not forget the great salmon. And I looked at Lakita, and Lakita looked at me because we had many moments like this with Steve Carter. And I was like, did he just say the great salmon? Well, from that moment on, I referred to him as the great salmon. I mean, to his face with texts and emails, and he took it well. He took it well, but he was such a dear friend. Am I done, Paul? All right. I just want to say a couple little things, and then I'll get out of here. This comes from Barry Long, and it's a book I found recently, ironically, up on Cobb, which, of course, was decimated with the fire. And it reminded me of Steve a lot. It says, I live, work, and perform in the world, but I do not love the world. I love life and the earth. He loved being here. He loved the planet. I saw him cry over what we do to the planet. So I know he was very sensitive. And in that love, I'm immortal. So that's how I feel, Steve Carter. You know, I can't do much about the circumstances, but I can do something about how I manage this. So I'll just carry him. I'll just carry him until I can't. So anyway, thanks for holding this space for me to honor my friend, the great salmon. Thanks, guys.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. I'm Cassidy. I met Steve Carter in 2009 in this life. I think we met a long, long time ago, many times. But I met him at a LET that he and Lokita were teaching with my partner, Micah. And continued to study with him for 7 years until his passing. I'm going to read so that I stay on track. But I do want to say that in preparing for this, I did ask Steve for some advice, and he said, don't worry about it. And he said what he and Lokita told me and many of us in the teacher training. He said, just go up there and be yourself. So that's what I'm going to do for the next 7 minutes. In Hindu mythology, the elephant-headed god Ganesh, as many of you know, is known as the remover of obstacles. He is also a bit of a trickster and a supreme teacher of humility and compassion. Now, Steve Carter in stature, I know, held little resemblance to an elephant. I don't know that that man could have gotten fat if he wanted to. However, he was, for me, and for many of people in this room, a masterful remover of obstacles. He had the tremendous capacity to go right to the depth of your being and truly help you eliminate whatever was not serving you like that. And sometimes he did it whether you wanted him to or not. He did this personally for me many times. And in my 7 years of studying with him, I witnessed him do this for many, many people. I don't know if Steve consciously evoked Ganesh each time he facilitated his groups, but I know that he loved Ganesh, and he used to have a big Ganesh tapestry hanging on the wall of the Meadow Building, and he often would sit in front of it while wearing a Ganesh t-shirt. So it was almost like a Steve Ganesh sandwich. There was Ganesh behind him and Ganesh coming out of him. And I remember one time he was teaching and, talking about that flow. Lokita was saying something. He was mid-sentence, and all of a sudden he turned around and he said, "Man, I love that tapestry. I love Ganesh." And then he went back to, remembering the great salmon. It was one of those moments. But he did love Ganesh. So in the days after his death, I set about building an altar in our living room. And in their preparation for going to Costa Rica, Steve and Lokita left us many things to help us in teaching. They left us a library of Tantra books. They left us a food processor, a Cuisinart, some random Osho cards. But I found not only one, but two, but 4 Ganesh t-shirts in our closet that he had given us that Micah often wears. Now, one of them is his nighttime shirt, so we get to see Ganesh every night. And it was in that moment I placed the shirts on the altar below Steve's picture, and I realized Steve Carter is Ganesh. I felt this massive presence, this gentle, massive presence, like that of an elephant, surrounding me in that moment as I was looking at his picture this was only a few days after his passing. Which of course left me in a pile of tears and laughter all at the same time on my living room floor. But that moment of really getting, no, you are Ganesh, I get it, I totally understand now. All of this teaching that you, all this knowledge that you bestowed upon me and all that you taught, I really understood it, and it led me to remember that there's another way in which Steve really reminds me of Ganesh, which is that often Ganesh is shown with one broken tusk. It's a little nub. And symbolically, this is to illuminate humility and the grace of imperfection. So some of you will remember this moment. One afternoon, Steve sat down across from Lokita. They're about to do a demo, and he begins to smile that long, slow, silky smile. Steve's smile could last like a minute. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And as he does this, he exposes this huge gap in his smile. There's no tooth there, none. It's just this big hole right about the place where a tusk would be if he was an elephant. So of course what Lokita said, something about, oh my goodness, you look like a pirate, and it just became a joke. But Steve's response was, well, who cares? It's just a tooth. You know, it's perfect. It's perfect. My smile's perfect, just the way it is. And he was always teaching us that. He was always teaching us to look beyond the surface and to truly love and accept ourselves exactly as we are in this exact moment. So that broken tusk smile, I feel, was his way of really embodying that teaching, really embodying deep love for ourselves, no matter how we are. And in all of his teachings, whether he was guiding someone into a deep inner process or simply leaning back in his chair, which he often did like this, you know, he was always telling us that it is perfect. And I've grappled with this because I can't reconcile his fate and say that it's perfect. I'm not there yet. I don't know that I'll ever be there. But I do know that whatever he was teaching, I know his aim and his underlying desire and motivation was liberation. He had so much love and care for his students, and I saw how much he helped us to remove our own obstacles. And I know that he felt as he was doing this, he was one liberated person at a time, helping to heal the whole planet. And in this, I can find refuge. So I now sit in his legacy, the legacy of he and Lokita's teachings, the legacy of Skydancing's teachings. And this legacy is the size of an elephant. It's huge. Steve Carter didn't come here to make a little pinprick on the surface of the planet. He came here to leave a big, grounded footprint. And as someone who he trusted to continue his work, now before I teach a workshop, many of those that he taught me to teach, I evoke Steve. And I can see his smile, tooth or no tooth. And I can hear his words just as we did at the beginning. I often hear those exact words, actually. And sometimes he'll crack a irreverent joke, which he was really good at, to alleviate my nervousness. But most of the time when I call upon him, when I evoke Steve now, I can simply feel him, and his presence is large and gentle, just like an elephant. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Wayne. I first met Steve about 2.5 years ago. My wife and I just celebrated our 25th anniversary and an empty nest. And we were looking to spice up our relationship a little bit. And we took a workshop that Stephen Lokita offered at Harbin. And wow, what a transformation, both in our relationship together and also in my work. I was going through a very, very bad situation at work, very caustic workplace. And Steve empowered me, basically showed that I had the power to change my path. And it took a while, but I did. 2 workshops it took. But he was largely responsible for me to leave that situation. And I'm eternally grateful for that. I created a Native American healing song, and I dedicate it to Steve. This is called A Tribute to Steve.
Thank you, Lokita, for inviting me to speak here in front of so many people who love Steve and who love you. My name is Peter Allen Bosma. And I'll always remember when I found out that my friend Stephen Carter had been murdered. Hearing Steve Wismer's shaky voice on my cell phone on the interstate saying, "Pull off the road, shut off the engine, call me back. It's important." And for 15 months I've wondered, why is this hole in my heart so ragged and frayed so that it doesn't knit back together? I'm usually pretty good at sorting through these things, but why is that skill failing me now? I read recently that we live our lives going forward but only comprehended looking backwards, and I thought, maybe that's the way to get in. Steve and I were two men of about the same age, whose many parallel interests and life experiences drew us together, and yet we were very different. I showed up in, 2003 or 2004 for a Timeless Loving workshop, and I had already been disillusioned by the spiritual vacancy of going to divinity school for a number of years, and instead went out and built buildings in San Francisco. But I always was wondering and always yearning for meaning based on some more spiritual depth. Steve, on the other hand, his life journey was quite different. He started out wearing a tool belt, swinging a hammer, building houses and apartments in the Central Valley. He spent time in the Army. Can you believe he was a military policeman? He raised a family. I hear he did a lot of surfing. But somewhere along the line, his soul called him onto a new trajectory toward finding his healing gifts and toward teaching. And then he met the love of his life, Lokita, and things really took off. So Steve and I met when we were going in different directions on different paths, but with so much in common. And we would do all kinds of guy things together. I mean, you name it. If it's water, if it's gardens, if it's machines, we'd do things. I think one of my favorite memories, though, is tromping through fields of knee-high grass in Costa Rica. And there was all these cow pies also out there. Sometimes with Steve Wismer, but always at the hottest point of the hottest day of the week. And we'd be scaring the heck out of the rodents and out of the snakes and probably out of ourselves, and amusing the cows who would all gather over there under the only trees that were around and looking at us and like, who are these crazy people? And we'd be like we're going to build this retreat center, this amazing retreat center. And the infinity pool is going to be over there, overlooking the ocean. Lokita's Watsu pool is going to be over there, the conference center. We had a great time, just enjoying and speculating and having fun. Steve and I would josh each other about the 3 B's: building, barbecuing, bullshitting. But, in reality, there was a nourishing intimacy of shared life adventures, interests, enthusiasms, and Steve was enthusiastic, our hopes and dreams. And we did that while hiking through the hills around Middletown or in Marin, occasionally wearing these really ugly red hats that Steve would bring along because it was hunting season. And we did that, we saw a couple pictures earlier, lying in the omnipresent hammocks in Costa Rica. Or we did that while sitting around the dinner table, joined by Lokita and dear friends. And there was a much cherished, deeper level Yeats once said that friendship is the only real home that one person can offer to another. Steve's friendship. Steve's friendship offered me a place of caring and generosity of spirit within which I could rediscover my dormant spiritual curiosity and begin to flourish on my soul's journey. That friendship also offered me a mirror in which I could recognize myself. I loved the way that Steve's mind and his heart just sparkled with wonder at the world around him. At his unique mix of curiosity and enthusiasm. His honoring of the love and the bond that he had with you, Lokita. The way he would frequently call in the Great Spirit. Oh, Great Spirit. The gestures that were always beckoning, always welcoming. Come on over here. Come on, let's talk about something. Each of these reminded me constantly of the presence of divine being, of the sacredness of life and love, and of the blessing of our friendship. I'd like to end with some lines of a poem by Stephen Spender, and I hope the poet will forgive me because I've adapted the poem to better fit my friend Steve. The poem's called, "I Think Continually of Those Who Were Truly Great." And it's kind of a big title, but it's not about heroic statues or exhibits in the museum over there or having lots of Twitter followers. I think continually of those who were truly great, who from the womb remembered their soul's history through corridors of light where the hours are suns, endless and singing, whose lovely ambition was that their lips, still touched with fire, should tell of the Spirit. Near the snow, near the sun, in the highest fields, see how the name Stephen Carter is celebrated by the waving grass, by the streamers of white clouds, and by whispers of wind in the listening sky. Celebrated together with the names of those like Steve, who in their lives fought for love, who wore at their hearts the fire's center. Born of the sun, Steve traveled a very too short while toward the sun and left the vivid air signed with his honor and his love. Thank you.
Anybody know how to make this thing work? Oh, well. If you just ask, there's always somebody who knows how to make it work. In a few days, I'll celebrate an anniversary. December 16th, 1943. I was 9 years old. My younger brother was 6. 5:40 in the afternoon. My mother had sent my brother and I to my aunts and uncles a block away, and she had rushed with my sister to the hospital. And at 5:40, the phone call came. My aunt took it. She came back to the table with her tears streaming down her eyes, And she said, "Your sister has passed away." I had no idea what that meant. And for the next 70 plus years, I worked on those words, trying to comprehend them and understand them. Some things happen in life that indelibly plant up here in the mind, and it's never forgotten. How many of you remember when you heard that Harbin had burned to the ground? I heard those words and I didn't know what to do with it. It was kind of a blank. And then the next thing that came along, I heard that Lokita had cancer. Another blank. And then the next thing that came along was Steve was dead. And finally, election day. What is going on here? I had to say to myself. Life does have its little surprises, doesn't it? The thing that I remember the most about Steve was an incredible sense of humor. It just blew me away. I have never, in my 82 years, I have never met another person in my life who was able to take a room of 50 strangers and in about 47 minutes have them out of their clothes dancing wildly in a circle. My hero. Awesome. In 1999, I first met Lokita and Steve at Brighton Bush. That was either the first or the second program that went on. I had no idea what to expect, but boy, was I ready. And when that program was over, my head was absolutely spinning. I just couldn't believe what I had experienced. It seemed like all my life I had been looking for something like that, and I had finally found it. And that was the beginning, and I got to go through that program as an assistant countless times, over and over and over and over again. And I never got tired of it, because every class there was different people in it, and so I got to meet all of these fantastic people. What an experience. There was a public Steve and there was a private Steve, and several times I got to meet the private Steve up at Cobb Mountain and at the new place. And I remember one time at Cobb Mountain, Steve had this garden off to the side of the house, and I would pitch my tent there. And then one day he wanted me to do something, I don't know what it was, but we went into the garage and there was this classic Chevy convertible. Wow. At the Timeless Loving programs, we were assigned, those of us who were assisting, we were assigned various roles. And one of the roles that I liked the most, I think, did we call it Guardian of the Heart? And I had been a coaching professional for about 20 years at that point. And so I got a chance when people kind of freaked out because they just didn't know how to handle what was coming up. I got the opportunity of being able to take them out on the porch or somewhere and talk with them and kind of settle them down and get them to the point where they could continue with the program. I loved those programs. They were just absolutely magnificent. And one of the great things, I got to watch from the very beginning the evolution of this Timeless Loving program. And Stephen Lokita would start something to see how it worked, and sometimes it didn't, but oftentimes it would work. And I can remember the first time, when all of the men in their sarongs went off to the side and the women went behind closed doors, and we're going to do something back there. And then Steve just, I think he almost pulled his hair out trying to get us to figure out some kind of a song or something when we came in. And we came in, and there was this circle of all these breathtakingly beautiful women with the spangles and sparkles and the candles. And it just took my breath away. That was one of the favorite things that I experienced. I loved every minute of it. Steve Carter was a real Renaissance man. I had a hard time finding anything that he couldn't do. And when he did some work on the Cobb Mountain House in terms of changing things, it just kind of blew my socks off that he was able to do that. Then you guys moved out to the new house, and boy, was that a challenge, and all the things that went on with that. I am so honored to have known this man and this woman. I should be so lucky as to leave a legacy behind as Steve Carter has done. And I think everyone has had these, what I would call these spiritual moments. This time to recognize yourself as a true spiritual being. Recognize yourself as a god or goddess. And it could have come in a variety of ways. This is a spiritual practice I have, to bring around awareness, calmness, connection. So I encourage you all to find that spiritual place. I can find that spiritual place a lot of times sitting on the beach, watching the waves. And that's where I am right now. I'm sitting on the beach watching the waves. And I'm more focused on talking into this microphone than I am watching the waves. But I can sit here doing nothing and watching the waves and find that place of deep calmness.
Well, Steve, you're standing in front of the Bhutan monasteries, it seems to me. And I wanted to tell you a deep, deep thank you from my heart. You're one of those beings who came into the world and who left it a much better place than when you found it. You're one of those beings who remind us that as human beings, one of our destiny is to create a link between heaven and earth. And you did that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, for me with Steve, it started at Harbin. One day, I booked myself for a massage. It was maybe 15 years ago. And I never, ever, ever got a more incredible massage than I got this day. I was completely flabbergasted. He went inside the muscles and he pulled all the tensions apart. And I got up from the bed, I looked in his eyes, and I said, "Thank you." And he looked at me and he said, "You know, Margot, I want to study with you, but I have no money." Then I looked at him and he said, "How about I pay you in massages?" We do an exchange. You teach me Tantra and I give you massages. And immediately I said yes, because I knew that this man was gold. I knew this man was special because as a world teacher, I can recognize when a diamond shows up. And then all I have to do is say yes, open the door. And so Steve and I started this deep friendship, and I recognized in him someone whose heart knew how to find quality. He was led from his heart to choose what's right, what's real, what works, what flows. And it was a natural quality. And the way he listened and practiced in the groups when he learned was precious. He was authentic. He wanted to learn. He was learning. And he followed that path. He had chosen Tantra. He wanted to practice and to teach Tantra. He knew it from the beginning. And I was honored to have him as a participant. And then I watched him, how he decided, well, to teach Tantra, I have to teach it with a Shakti. So he started to look and couple himself with this one and try it with this one. It wasn't quite working. So then he said, thank you, and moved on. Then he tried with this one. It seemed like it could be a match. You know, the right body type, living in the same area. Tried for a while. No, not quite it. So I was watching this dance, and I was wondering, when is he going to manage? And then one day, he showed up at a workshop that I was teaching with Harold Dahl, the Watsu man. And he showed up with the most gorgeous Shakti named Lokita. And he introduced me to her, and I thought, aha, this might be the ticket. And you know when I found out that it was the ticket? You know how you really discover your friends when you enter into the worst possible situations and they stick by you at that moment? They don't drop you, they don't let you go, they don't judge you. That was the moment. This was the worst workshop of my life. Okay? I have been a teacher for 30 years. I am the grandmother of Tantra. I have taught everywhere. And always it was a beauty, an honor, a wonder to teach Skydancing Tantra. But this workshop, I thought that the water of Harold would somehow wash away the emotions that I stirred up. And instead, the opposite happened. Somehow, I don't know what went on. I'm not going to go into details, but it didn't really work. So, at the end of it, looking totally innocent, Steve shows up holding Lokita by the hand, who is following and present, and they say, thank you, Margot. We want to continue to assist you. We want to work with you. And I thought, wow, I really thought that these people would drop away. And so I knew that they were truly coming to me from the heart and that they were seeing beyond appearances and that they wanted to continue to go deeper with me. And then this is what happened. So many moments, so many beautiful moments. So I remember a moment where we shot a movie together. And I will never forget the moment when Steve took off, and it was the time for the man's dance, the man to dance for his Shakti. First, I had to make her up, because she didn't care about all that. And I had been in the movies, so I had to give her my bikini, and I had to fix up her hair, and she, got together this beautiful costume, and we took the, Hawaiian tapestries from God knows where, my bedroom or someplace, and we created this beautiful environment. And Lokita had to come on stage to show seduction. And seduction is when a woman goes deep into herself, closes her eyes, feels the love for herself, and when she's ready and really together connected with her heart, she opens her eyes and her arms and she shows that beauty, that inner beauty, to her Shiva. So Lokita did that, and this became my favorite moment in 4.5 hours of movie. She did it so deeply, and she looked at Steve, and Steve responded so beautifully. And then we shot Steve dancing the man's dance, seducing his Shakti. He was divine. He was incredible. So that was one time, and then there were so many other times. Another time where I really appreciated Steve's wisdom, Steve's way of patiently listen with the heart, is when I had a breakdown with my Shiva. It was really bad. I was totally pissed at him. I was ready to quit. And I called Steve and I said, Steve, I'm not going to guide and lead this next workshop. I can't work with this man. It's impossible. I was really in a state. And Steve started talking to me. I don't know what he said, but he said it with such a wisdom, such a heartfulness, such a depth of friendship. He showed me all the angles of why I could choose this over that. And finally, at the end of this call, I surrendered. I said, okay, I'll do it. He turned me around. He turned me around. So Steve listened with his heart. He was generous. He was patient. He always kept his sense of humor. And I could remember so many times when we sat around the dinner table and it was either me or Lokita who were ranting and raving as only women can do. We're in a state, in a mood, in an emotion, and Steve always there with his smile, his patience, and his solutions. It was kind of like an alchemy, like a magician transforming things just by his presence. I love the man. Really, really love him. And I have something to suggest about why this happened, that he got taken out this way. And I'll tell you what it is. I believe he got promoted. He didn't get demoted. He got promoted. Because I have heard, and I have it on very certain sources, deep sources, that when a man's soul wants to live and experience something that is not available right this minute in this life, but has a yearning for it, the angels and those who are in the other dimensions wait for this man to deserve to get this. And for getting this transformation or transition, he has to pass away. And the passing has to happen right this very minute, not a second before and not a second after, because on the other side, things are ready to take him in. So he can transition into that life, that moment where he gets to his full awakening. That maybe wouldn't have completed itself in this life that he was in. So I believe that Steve was helped into his transition to his full awakening by these idiots. And maybe they were the hand of God. And maybe Steve was promoted, and maybe, just maybe, he's still smiling. and telling us, it's okay, I'm still here.
Wow, it's a heavy basket. It's got lots of stuff in it. Lots of love, lots of good stories. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to do like a little ritual. And you all know the ritual. What we're going to do is we're going in a moment to rub our hands together. But before we do that, I'd like to invite Steve's daughter Emily to join me here. So this basket contains all the stories that will be given to Emily and Rob and Steve's children. And there's more stories, we can collect them later. So, do you want to hold the basket? So let's all rub our hands together, you know how to do that, and give all the love that you have in your heart for Steve to all these stories in the basket, and to Emily as she stands here, and to Robin, his son. And may those stories and memories help resonate that melody of Steve for his family and his beloveds, for now and maybe future generations. And we're going to do a chant now, in a moment. And we're going to chant the Om Mani Padme Hum. There will be music to guide us, so you don't have to sing it all quietly. But, you know, there's music there to guide us. And so, for me, what this mantra means is the syllable Om is the beginning of everything. Om is the calling of it, of everything. Then the Mani is the jewel. The Padme is the lotus. And so the lotus and the jewel, the two separate things, the life and the death, you know, the seeming opposites in one. And the hum basically means so be it. And so when we chant that, we get to chant that. I think we're going to chant that about 108 times. And if I could ask the wonderful sound man just to turn the volume up just a little bit when we chant that. And after we chant it, I'm going to leave the room by the side door. And then you're welcome to follow through the side door and gather, etc. So, thank you.